Hey guys, and welcome to my early preview for the Timeless Isles. Now, the Timeless Isles is a new zone that's being added in patch 5.4. It's just to the southeast, I believe, of the Jade Forest, and it looks pretty cool. As you'll see in the screenshots, it uses the same tile set as the Jade Forest. Now, as for the things that we know are on it, the Wrathion quest is tied in, because Wrathion asks you to defeat the celestial bosses that are on the island, and collect these 50 timeless coins. Now, the timeless coins, we don't know the source of those yet. So the main thing is there's a pet tournament. That's one thing we know. There's the bosses that we know, and Blizzard have said that there will be Battlefield Barons style PvE content, so this all looks pretty interesting. The first thing I'm going to go into is the pet tournament. Now, there was pet models that I showed earlier on in a daily, I think. The aspect of CG, aspect of Niuzao, aspect of Xuen, and the aspect of Yulon. Now these are these four pets, as you can see. Now they're probably rewards for the pet tournament or drops from the celestial bosses. It's hard to know exactly what. So the next thing I'm going to look at is the screenshots for the zone. Now, these were taken with the Hunter's Eagle Eye ability. What Eagle Eye does is it zooms in on a location from afar. If you try to go there now in the PTR, it ports you away, so this is the best we can do. All in all, I think, it looks very cool. I think the Jade Forest was the most aesthetically pleasing of the zones that we got in Pandaria. Well, probably that and the Vale, but I would have definitely preferred this place to the Vale. So overall, it's very nice, pretty bright, and it does appear to be of a decent size, which is pretty nice considering it's the final big bit of PvE solo content that we'll be getting. Now, on to group content and the world bosses. So there are 5. There's CG the Red Crane, Yulon the Jade Serpent, Niuzao the Black Ox, and Xuen, or Zen, or I don't know, something like that, the White Tiger, and Ordos, who is the Fire God of the Yangol. The Yangol are those lovely people that we've killed mercilessly since the expansion started. So we have dungeon journal stuff for these bosses, and I'm going to jump into it and give you an idea of what I think the fights will be like. So to kick it off, we have the first boss, which is CG. Now, all we have is abilities, so all I can really do is infer what the boss is like. So his abilities are Inspiring Song, which heals him for 5% per second, lasting 10 seconds, so that's just something that'll need to be interrupted. The next one's Firestorm. This summons a whirlwind of fire that spins around the room, doing 200k per 2 seconds damage to people who are in it. So essentially that's just a watch out for the firestorm and don't go in it, or maybe it's something on the floor, but I'm going to assume that it spins around the place. His next one's Beacon of Hope. This selects a player, and all players within 5 yards take 90% less damage for 20 seconds. The thing is, right after this, he does Blazing Song, which does 500k damage every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. So what will happen is, he'll do Beacon of Hope, and then everyone will have to stack on the player who's the beacon, and then you'll need to heal your way through Blazing Song. Now at 66 and 33%, he will summon adds, and it's called Crane Rush. So what these adds do is they cast Blazing Nova, which does 300,000 damage to players within 4 yards. I got the impression that the adds sort of run about the place, so I'm going to assume is this fight is pretty simple. You'll nuke him down to 66%, you'll summon adds, you kill the adds, nuke him down to 33, you'll summon adds, you kill them, and then you kill him. And in between that, he's doing his Firestorm, Inspiring Song, and the Beacon of Hope / Blazing Song kind of thing he does. Overall, it looks like a relatively interesting boss, but shouldn't be too hard. Now the next one is Yulon, and there's probably a little bit less that I can infer in this, but the abilities are Jadefire Burst. This does 30k damage to nearby players, which probably means everyone around in the raid, and increases the fire damage you take by 5%. Now, it's interesting to see what this is. His next one is Jadefire Breath. This does 300,000 damage in a 40-yard cone. So actually, what I said about Jadefire Burst might not be true. It could actually be the tank swapping mechanic, because as these stacks increase, it'll get to the point where Jadefire Breath will just kill the tank. So they'll probably have to tank swap so the breath doesn't kill them. And of course, if the tank tries to avoid the breath, he'll just put the breath on the raid. Or she, of course. So, yeah, I think that's what that is. His next ability is Jadefire Bolt. This creates multiple Jadefire blazes on the floor. The blazes do 100k fire damage to players in them per second, so that's just, the usual stay out of the fire. And the next thing he does is Jadefire Wall. This summons a large wall of fire that does 500,000 damage to players that are inside it, so... or not in it, yeah, like if it hits you, it does 500k damage. So it's pretty much, this fight just seems like standard tank swapping. Don't stand in the Jadefire Breath, don't stand in the fire puddles on the floor, and make sure to avoid the Jadefire Wall, which, you know what, it should be quite cool actually. Next up we have Niuzao, who's the Black Ox, they're not going to tell us. So his first ability is Headbutt. Now this is something the tanks will have to worry about because it does 100,000 physical damage. Sorry, not 100,000, a million. So you'll probably need to make sure that you pop every cooldown you have or something like that. I don't know how to tank, so whatever. Now it knocks the player back and removes all threat. The removing threat's rather interesting to me because I suppose it's a forced tank swap mechanic, isn't it? His next thing is Oxen Fortitude, so he tests the enemy fortitude, increasing all players' health by 20% and Niuzao's damage by 10% per stack of something. We don't know what the exact spell is, I can't find it here in any of the databases. Now the effect stacks, so I'm not really sure how that'll work actually. Now his next thing is Massive Quake. This does 100,000 damage, physical damage every second for 10 seconds, so probably the raid will have to stack and use AoE heals and perhaps healer cooldowns to survive through that. His next ability is Charge. He does this at 66 and 33% health. He will charge around the room doing 500 damage to enemies within 30 yards every 1 second. So, you know, I'm not really sure how this will work. He's a very large boss, so perhaps if you're just in his radius wide, he's running around the place, you take that much damage, but I suppose it'll be interesting to see. This does look like the main raid wipe mechanic though. And the next boss is Xuen, whatever, the White Tiger. So his abilities are Spectral Swipe. He will swipe at players in a 0-yard cone, i.e. it'll just hit the tank. This does 300,000 physical damage and reduces armor by 10% for 1 minute. That could end up being a tank swap ability or something like that. His next one is Leap. He leaps at the player and then does a Spectral Swipe on them, so that's something healers will have to watch out for because that'll be pretty high burst damage against the raid, that is. Then he has Crackling Lightning. This does 100,000 nature damage to players every 1 second and jumps to 5 nearby targets. So essentially, everyone will just have to have, say, 10-yard spread or something like that. Should be pretty easy. His next one's Chi Barrage. This launches a barrage of Chi at the players. It inflicts 500,000 nature damage to all players within 3 yards of the impact locations. I'm going to assume that there's actually, a delay. It'll show you where the thing's going to land, then it lands. So it's just a, standard, don't be silly. And then he has one called Agility, which increases his haste by 300% for 1 minute, so he's going to attack a lot faster. And finally we're on to the last boss, which is Ordos, Fire God of the Angol. So his abilities are Magma Crush. This does 5 million damage, split evenly amongst all players within 20 yards, so you'll have to stack up to make sure the raid doesn't die. His next one is Burning Soul. This does 50k damage every 1 second for 10 seconds. Now on expiration, he casts this on a player by the way. When it expires, the player explodes, which does 300 damage to the player and anyone within 8 yards of the player and knocks them up in the air. So essentially you'll just have to stay away from this one person and healers will have to heal up the burst damage. It's quite a lot of raid damage though if people do that wrong. His next ability is Pool of Fire. This quite simply just creates a pool of fire that does 50k damage a second to anyone in it. Then he has Ancient Flame. It summons an orb which does 50,000 damage to the nearest player every 2 seconds, and it increases the damage taken by 5% for 10 seconds. We don't know if that stacks, but if it were to stack, then there'd probably be some stuff with, juggling your stacks between the raid or something like that. And finally, he has Eternal Agony. So after 5 minutes, he channels all the powers of his orbs into a big old ball of magma, which does 300,000 fire damage to all players every 1 second. I'm going to assume that is something that is a raid wipe mechanic, not something that needs to be healed through, because the healers would have to be pretty damn ridiculous. So that's actually all we know about the Time Missile at the minute. It does look pretty cool, I must say. The pet tournament will be interesting. It might actually mean that I have to jump into the pet battles, which I haven't done at the minute. As for the screenshots, I think it's quite a pretty zone, and they can do some nice things. It's my favourite tile set of Miss Pandaria, so that's nice. And these bosses all actually look quite interesting. Hopefully they're not a ridiculously easy Zerg, but yeah. Now, based on a whole bunch of things, the Celestials aren't corrupted or anything, and you're just killing them. Well, you're not killing them, you're fighting them as a part of sparring, as you're training for killing Garrosh, who is the queen douchebag of the Horde, the true Horde, all that shit. So yes, thank you for watching this little preview of what we so far know about the Time Missiles. Of course, if I get substantial information soon, I will put that in another video or something like that. But for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.